Previously on The Walking Dead.
We've concluded the return to The Walking Dead Season 2 for 5 more mysteries. In the meantime, this is the beginning of a new series called The Walking Dead Mini Mysteries, for one-off, obscure, or speculative topics that don't quite make it into the main compilation videos. Season 2's return to Gil's Pit Stop, the primary hub location of Season 1's 400 Days DLC, visited by just about every character you can think of, is one of the most disturbing locations in the game, and is our location for this mystery. Upon walking up to the bathroom, Chuck's theme plays in the background, familiarising the player with the tragedy of Season 1's 3rd episode. The vibe is hopeful, yet we know something bad is about to happen. Unlucky Omid. Besides Omid's and Michelle's bodies that have reanimated, left to wander here for eternity unless they were buried by Krista and Clementine afterwards, which is likely what happened, this tiny, insignificant portion of the game is home to many Easter eggs and secrets, including the most upsetting mystery I've ever talked about on my channel. Firstly, there's graffiti all over the stalls and windows. We cannot read most of these normally, although with the help of a free cam, we can examine them up close. Most of these messages are silly developer notes and inside jokes. I love them. Let's read out a few together. We're back. T-Bone is that illest, and there's a note below it saying, I'm sorry to hear that, I hope he gets better soon. Where da weed at? Poop freely, my brethren. I just wrote on the wall, take that, society. And this one is the hardest to read, but it says, the largest eggs in the world are laid by sharks, followed by a joke about someone's dad. My favourite one is definitely this drawing here, which reminds me of Kenny. The second secret is this: if you get the angle just right, a missing cat poster will become visible on the right side of the bathroom. Her name is Pixel. She has been missing since June 9th, year unknown. Where I live, this would be the 6th of September. There's also an unspecified cash reward at the bottom. I just hope that she's okay and was eventually found. We have to remember that walkers will eat animals in addition to humans, anything they can get their hands on. Maybe Sam the dog ate her as well. There's another variation of Pixel's missing poster in Wolf Among Us. Furthermore, she's credited under Telltale Pets, confirming she is the pet cat of one of the developers. Pixel's owner got another cat named Dolce in 2014, who is also visible in later episodes. Now for the main topic of this video, the middle stall. An interaction that shows on screen for no more than 2 seconds. Upon entering the bathroom, you have to check all 3 doors before it's safe. Inside the middle stall, a shocking image of a blood-soaked wall and doll will appear. There are flies surrounding the bloody doll and a splatter of blood on the wall behind it, as if someone was shot and killed right here on the toilet. The mystery is this: who did this doll belong to, and more importantly, who was killed in such a gruesome way, and for what reason? A couple of things we need to establish are that the blood on the wall is consistent with a gunshot blast or severe blunt trauma. The victim's body is now missing, meaning someone buried or disposed of them before we showed up. And finally, if we assume that the doll was in the victim's possession, it would mean that they were likely a child. Now with all of the surface evidence out of the way, we can finally talk about some theories. The theory that a child, abandoned or lost, was bitten before locking themselves in the stall and succumbing to the infection with only their doll to console them, later being found and shot by a bandit group down the line, is by far the darkest possible theory to start with. Considering the nature of The Walking Dead Season 2 and just how bleak this story was at one point in time, worse than perhaps any game to ever exist, an outcome so cruel is always a real possibility in a world this unforgiving. And I think that's the point of presenting us with moments like this, Sam the dog and the better to sleep ending, to name a few. It would logically explain the circumstances of their death. After initially locking themselves in the bathroom out of fear, they became unable to escape as a walker. Therefore, the first person with a gun who entered the bathroom put them out of their misery and cleared the body. Leaving behind the teddy bear as a disturbing aftermath for us to find in Season 2. This child could have also been a former member of a group who once inhabited Gil's Pit Stop, perhaps the granddaughter of the old couple, Walt and his wife Jean, the only occupants of this location during or before Clementine's visit. Later killed by Nate and used as watchdogs by Roman's group down the line, it's possible that this altercation with Nate and the old couple may have resulted in the death of this child, which would explain their extreme hostility upon his return. The context is never provided to us, but seeing as Russell's story occurred on day 184, and season 1 started on July 19th, 2003, and ending, quote, 6 days after Clementine's 9th birthday, according to The Stranger, which would be the 1st of November 2003. Also, Krista isn't visibly pregnant at the end of season 1, but is at the start of season 2, so we can add 3 to 5 more months, which would perfectly align with the timeline of the 400-day safe zones. The only inconsistency is that Clementine doesn't look noticeably older until the 16-month time skip, but that's just an error on behalf of Telltale. In that case, the stuffed toy could have been left there as a memorial. As it was not buried with the body, the toy was picked up from the ground and deliberately placed back on the toilet seat to remind other survivors about their tragic passing, and to not use the middle stall out of respect.
Oh, man.
This is very interesting though. On the wall, there's a piece of graffiti unique to the middle stall. This could provide us with a name or a clue regarding this mystery. Here it is. It's hard to make out, but it looks like it says Ben G. Dead. There's a 4th letter that I can't make out. Please let me know what you think it says. Ben G could be the first name and surname initial of the child who died, in which case I will refer to him as Ben from now on. Unlike the other messages, this one seems to directly acknowledge the boy who died, as if written on the wall by a family member or friend of his. Of course, it could always be the stylized, intelligible signature of one of the developers. The top word could also say clear, as in Ben G was the person who cleared the bathroom. It's a good theory, but I don't think that Nate was directly responsible for the death of a child. As weird as he is, I just don't think that he's on that level of depravity. And we have to remember that this is actually the girls' bathroom, so Ben would have only hid inside here as an emergency, which debunks the theory that Gil's pit stop was inhabited at the time and that he was simply caught off guard. Normally, the idea of a child who had people watching over him dying in such a way wouldn't make much sense, but seeing as it's Gil's pit stop we're talking about here, the most exposed location in the entire series, where break-ins and ambushes were extremely common.
I can't believe he just snuck in.
The second break-in we've had in the last couple of weeks. Last time we couldn't catch them, and they got away with more medicine than we could afford to lose.
If Roman is still looking for us, he wouldn't be able to do anything to us there.
There's no way that guy is still looking for you. We've been to that truck stop. There's no one left.
The possibility that someone ambushed the compound from the forest and they found him hiding is very high, and is what links us to the final theory. The story I personally believe is that Ben was shot and killed by a bandit. Unfortunate in his final moments, it was a direct foreshadowing of what happens between Clementine and Michelle. In fact, it's exactly the same, and that was the point of this warning. Clementine hides from Michelle, a lone scavenger who came across a truck stop from the nearby highway. She finds Clementine and points a gun at her through the gap in the stall. She could have easily pulled the trigger here. The only difference is that Michelle has some humanity left over, threatening to but ultimately choosing not to shoot Clementine. In addition to begging for forgiveness and dropping the gun after accidentally killing Omid, the bandit who killed Ben was multiple levels beyond the likes of her, or even Carver. He wasn't as lucky as Clementine was, and I can't imagine how terrifying those final moments were. I just hope that justice was served on whoever was responsible for such a disgusting act. If we're talking viable suspects, an unnamed bandit is our best bet. But in terms of people we know of who could theoretically resort to this level, there's the Forest Raider group who killed Krista. Bonnie and Arvo, I could see them stooping this low as well. Two of the most deceitful, immoral people in the series who would do anything to benefit themselves at the cost of others, blending in as people-pleasing sheep while often playing the victim or blaming children if things didn't go their way.
What do you want? Nothing, huh? It must be nice being a pretty little girl. No one ever expects you to do a damn thing.
Not to mention killing people and stealing food from a newborn kid, knowing AJ would have died in episode 5 if Kenny hadn't caught them. There's no evidence to go off, but people have commented that this guy from the 400 Days notice board, Survivor 3 to be exact, looks terrifying. He reminds me a lot of David from The Last of Us, and unlike the other suspects, his photograph is enough evidence to suggest that he was always close by, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Thank you for watching the first mini-mystery of this new video series. Sorry if this first mystery was a little more headcanon, story-driven and obscure. These small details in horror games, topics that no one really talks about, are all fascinating to me, and I'd love to create several episodes on various topics from every game in the series that don't make it into the big compilations. Included will also be more what if hypothetical videos, similar to the what if Ben didn't exist discussion from my very first one.